Good day and welcome to a new journey for our church school lessons at Grace United Methodist Church here in Winfield. This series was prompted by, over the last couple years, I've made so many references to what I learned about faith and life and living with the faith community within the Indian community called Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference. And I received several questions about that. And so, as I progressed in the last 2 or 3 months in dealing with your questions, I thought, I'll just, create a series about what I've learned from the faith community within the Indian community and share those understandings with you. I want to be clear. I'm not sharing what the Indians taught me because the Indians are short on teaching. I'm sharing what I learned from the Indians, for the Indians are long on storytelling, and from those stories I learned so much. And so I want to be clear, I'm not sharing anything that I believe would be an Indian belief per se, although it might be. I'm sharing what I learned from my life with the Indian community. This week, I'm sharing what I believe is the foundation of faith, and that is, quote, the Great Spirit. I discovered the beauty of this in terms of the acknowledgement I have that there is a spiritual dimension to life of human life which intersects with the divine. And the divine, according to what I learned from the Indian community, the divine is not a being, for a being can be named, a being can be defined, and therefore a being can be controlled. But rather, divine is a spiritual presence which can be discovered, experienced, and shared. And in the Indian faith community, the language for the divine is the Great Spirit. Now, there are two historic narratives which are helpful as we explore this beauty of the Great Spirit. The first is to remind ourselves that in the early centuries of the Hebrew faith community, there were two words used in reference to the divine. One of the words was Elohim, Elohim, but the other word was just 4 consonants, no vowels, J, W, H, J, H, W, H, J, H, W, H, no consonants. It could not be pronounced. It was a mystery that could not be named, controlled, or defined. Indeed, this ancient understanding was clear because they believed when a reality could be named, it therefore will be defined and therefore can be controlled. The beauty of the Great Spirit is that it is in the tradition of JHWH, that Hebrew tradition of faith. The Great Spirit has no name. It cannot be defined and it cannot be controlled. It can only be discovered, experienced, and shared. Now, the other narratives is within the Methodist tradition. That is when Methodist tradition Methodist missionaries went to Oklahoma in the mid-19th century, over 170 years ago or so. They were unique among the Christians who came to convert the Indians. Most Christians who sought to convert the Indians taught that the Indians had to abandon their understanding of the Great Spirit and replace it with the Anglo-Saxon word God. The Methodist missionaries did not teach as others taught. They embraced the Indian experience of the Great Spirit and offered Jesus as the one who taught the way of agape love, which was complementary to the Great Spirit, not in contradiction to the Great Spirit. And as a result of this witness of those early missionaries, hundreds of faith communities emerged among the tribes who lived primarily in the then territory and now state of Oklahoma. And over 100 of those faith communities still exist today in what is known as the Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference of United Methodist Church, which is the only organizational structure of any denomination that exists solely for the purpose of faith development among the Indian people. These faith communities, which now exist in the Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference, exist in over 30 tribes together, celebrating the beauty of the Great Spirit as the foundation of faith. Now, these two narratives of JHWH and the early Methodist missionaries provide the historic perspective. This is my story of how I experience the beauty of the Great Spirit. First of all, the Great Spirit is always present. I learned from the Indian faith community that human beings do not have to invoke or plead for the presence of the Great Spirit. The Great Spirit is always present. What humans must do is simply recognize the presence of the divine, always in every nook and cranny of life. The Great Spirit is present. Divine beings come and go, just like their human counterparts come and go, but not the Great Spirit. The Great Spirit is always and everywhere present. How beautiful is the Great Spirit as the foundation of faith. Not a being that can be named, but a presence that can be experienced. Secondly, in human relationships, when one deals with or relates to another human, whether they be enemy or friend, one is dealing with and relating to the Great Spirit. For the Great Spirit is as present in the other as the Great Spirit is present in and with me. How beautiful it is in forming human relationships that I've often said the way of reconciliation is living and working with those with whom you disagree. Well, belief in the Great Spirit makes that mandatory. For indeed, as we work with and live with others with whom we disagree. The ministry of reconciliation, the foundation of that is the Great Spirit. That the Great Spirit is as present in the other as it is in me. Thirdly, the Great Spirit is a mystery. I learned from the Indians the importance of this mystery, for this prevents the faithful. This prevents me from creating the divine in my own image. I learned from living with the Indians that the gravest and most devastating part of the journey of faith is when human beings create the divine with human characteristics. The beauty of the Great Spirit is that the Great Spirit is that mysterious presence of love, not a being with human characteristics. How beautiful is the Great Spirit, a mysterious presence in our life and in the life of all people. Oh, I'm tempted to go on and on about the beauty of the Great Spirit. As you can tell, I'm excited about that in my journey of faith. But I'll just stop with these three, which represent the awesome gift of the Indian faith community. A gift that has brought beauty to my own faith journey. I simply cherish the gift as I share my faith story with you, that indeed it was enriched by my exposure to the worship of the Great Spirit in the Indian community. Oh, there's a lot to think about in terms of how we think about the divine in our faith journey, but I'll simply leave you, as always, with some questions. First of all, what is your response to never needing to invoke or plead for the presence of the divine? Secondly, how does the ancient tradition of JHWH strengthen or weaken your belief in the divine? And finally, what teachings of Jesus come to mind when we explore that in human relationships, the divine is present with one and the other? Enjoy your journey, and we'll look forward to our conversation together.